Good evening, friends. Thank you for joining me every evening to follow what's happening in India and abroad. And thank you for sending me your useful comments and suggestions. If you believe in this channel, do share it with your friends and spread the message. Our only mission is to bring you the truth and both sides of the story. Thank you for your support. We have Dr. Vineet Aggarwal with us today, who is best described as an author of three books: Vishwamitra, The Legend of Parshuram, and Bharat. He also specializes in the decoding of Hindu mythology through his blogs and vlogs. Welcome, Dr. Vineet.
Thank you so much, Meena ji. That's a very kind introduction. I'm not a specialist. I'm myself a learner. So
Yeah,
yes, but I like to share whatever I've learned with others. So I think that's going to be the focus of this discussion as well.
yeah. So, viewers, while he's being very humble, let me tell you something. Let's see. I've been listening to some of his, interviews, and I just, what he says, had to really sink in because it was so interesting, and also the fact that see he could travel any length, and cover different subjects, everything in a very short time. So that I found amazing. So I'm sure viewers that you will be, enthralled with this talk. So, if you're okay, Dr. Vineet, shall we start?
Please, please.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, the first thing I wanted to ask you is that let us start with your recent tweet, about a Japanese Hindu temple called Kandisuku, I think, located in
Yes.
Indonesia. Yeah, whose shape resembles the Maya temples, and it has yielded a crystal Shiva Linga that stands on an intricately engraved bronze base, which still contains water from the 15th century. This is amazing. So I found that. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So, Meena ji, actually, unfortunately, a lot of us Indians, we do not realize how much Indian influence exists in the Southeast Asian region.
Yeah,
And this influence is because of a lot of factors. A lot of trading happened between the southern kingdoms and very far off countries, right, from China up to Rome.
yes,
And even otherwise, there were kings who, like Raja Raja Chola, who
yes,
extended his dominion to a lot of countries in the Southeast Asian region.
yeah,
Even when we didn't have our own kingdoms in these countries, the Hindu influence because of the
yeah,
traders was very strong and very prominent.
yeah,
In fact, so I work in a pharmaceutical company and I travel to Southeast Asia for work most of the times. So it has been a very interesting journey for me to rediscover our roots in these countries. And you see
absolutely.
so much Indian influence. So Indonesia, today we know is a Muslim-dominated country, basically, which happened because of trade and other factors. But there is one island in Indonesia, which is Java, which is
Yeah,
predominantly Hindu even today.
yeah,
And you find a lot of such startling discoveries coming out of Java. You
yeah,
have existing temples. There's a temple to Varun, which is a very popular tourist spot
yeah,
in Indonesia. And
yeah,
all these the artifacts that keep coming out of Indonesia are very very exciting. So
yeah,
this particular tweet that I had done was for this image that you are projecting now.
yeah,
It resembles a Maya temple, which is very interesting because South America is at the other end of the globe,
yeah,
and the below image actually shows the crystal lingam, and the
yes,
bronze base contained
yeah,
water, which was
yeah.
through isotope studies, which was discovered to be from the 15th century. So a
Okay,
lot of people get surprised knowing that Hinduism existed in these countries, but it is not surprising at all because there are Hindu temples in Vietnam, there are Hindu temples in Cambodia. In fact, a lot of people would have traveled to Thailand.
mm,
If you're living in India, at
yeah,
some point of time you go to Bangkok,
yeah,
for whatever reasons, at some point
yes,
of time you would land up in Bangkok either for shopping or for travel
yeah,
or for holiday. And Bangkok airport is called Suvarnabhumi Airport,
yes,
which itself is a name from Sanskrit,
yes,
because this entire land, the southern part of Thailand, Cambodia, this part was actually a kingdom called Funan.
yes,
Funan was in Chinese documents, but in Sanskrit, this land was called Suvarnabhumi, and
yes,
that is why still, the Bangkok airport retains that name.
yeah,
These kingdoms, these ancient kingdoms, were based on a lot of Indian influence. Their script had Sanskrit words written in the Grantha script. Grantha
Yeah.
script is a southern script,
Yeah.
and but interestingly, they used Grantha script to write Sanskrit. So
Yes.
there was a clear influence of North as well as South in these kingdoms. The Angkor Wat, everybody knows it's the biggest religious complex in the world, and it is, I think, an 11th century temple, and this is in the heart of Cambodia. Entire Cambodian economy revolves around Angkor Wat.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
You find the logo everywhere, right from their flag to their logo to the Angkor beer. So everything has Angkor on it, and this
Also,
Angkor is
yeah, also,
uh,
doctor, I remember my son went there. He was telling me that, see, people are so polite. The people themselves are very, very soft spoken and very, very polite. Very
yes.
different from many other countries.
Right, right. No, and they recognize, like unlike many other countries, they also recognize the Indian influence
Yes.
on their culture.
Yeah.
And I've seen that across different countries in the region. And even in Thailand, the ancient kingdom, it had the capital which was called Ayutthaya.
Yeah.
So which is a direct take on Ayodhya. And the
Yeah.
Thai kings even today have the title of Rama.
Yes.
So the influence is amazing,
Yeah.
and these discoveries are not at all surprising for me because I've been to these countries. And if ever you get to travel to any of these countries, if you are in Bangkok, I would
Yeah.
suggest please go and visit Cambodia. It's just an hour's flight away.
Yeah.
Do visit Cambodia, do visit their religious structures, their museums, and you'll find so much interesting Indian influence that exists.
Yeah.
So I think this is just one of the
Aspects.
discoveries, and there's many, many more to come.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was thinking as you tweeted this, doctor, is that, see, through research we have found, many sort of evidences of Shiva temples being found all around the world, right up to South America, and you find the lingas all over, and uh, we even feel a lot of the people have gone to Mount Kailasha say that still Lord Shiva exists, and he travels between different lokas. Now, unfortunately, in our country, we have, if we look at the pages of our history, all we have come to know about in our history is that there was the Mughal Empire, the Delhi Sultanate. Though we have had, so much of rich heritage, right from the Maurya Empire, the Gupta Empire, the Maratha Empire, the Chalukya, the Chola, Vijayanagara. All we hear about is something like the Khilji or the Mughal Empire. And then we have historians like Romila Thapur, who dismisses notions of so-called Hindu trauma over Islamic iconoclasm and destruction of Hindu temples as a later day fabrication. She states that in medieval times, Hindu kings themselves often vandalized Hindu temples and images. And we all feel, and we've been vehemently speaking about how Indian history should be rewritten by scholars, and the actual truth should, come out. So, for example, this, the very statue of Subhash Chandra Bose, when it was placed on India Gate, you can imagine the kind of pride that all Indians felt. That
Right,
yeah, that somewhere, we're returning back to our roots. So, can you
right.
imagine? See, when I heard you speak, in Ranveer's channel, I was just wondering that, see, your immense knowledge about what the complete science behind our Hindu, background, the history, shows that, see, there's so much that our people don't know, you know,
Yes.
and so I just want to, quickly, just a quick brief about how, see, what they call mythology. Okay, so if you're talking about, let's start from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So in every stage, we've seen that there is ample proof, that the spots, the lands and the places where they have been, like the Ram Setu, or this is, like where Krishna comes, the Dwarka. It is, found underground, remnants of that,
Water,
and
yeah.
then, yeah, yeah. And then recently they found chariots and horses, remnants of that. which we know that happened during the wars that happened, and when they traveled to and fro, and also the maps that left proof that all this existed. And then you talk about so much of art that's coming out, where we see all sorts of weaponry that's used. And then again, here, this is something you could explain, Doctor, the Kurukshetra war, as shown in the Ankar.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
one of the murals from Angkor Wat, and in fact, it's a grand temple, and it has murals from Mahabharata, Ramayana,
Yes.
from the Puranic literature. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you also have the Raman's, palace, on top, where he could have landed only through his Pushpak Viman. There's no other, there are no steps or nothing to reach there. So that's another, that is a graphic thing of the Pushpak Viman. And also the distance traveled, when he took Sita back to Lanka. And then also we have a shot of the war when Lord Rama fights Ravana, and then when they return to Ayodhya, the beauty of and it's the everything shows that, see, there's something much more than what is described in the actual books that we read. This is an art piece by a Westerner of Ayodhya. Look at the beauty of it. Yeah. Okay. So this is, I think, moving on to your area. So, so
Right. So
yeah,
I'm not a historian, so
yeah,
I generally
yeah. So
don't
yeah, you're
know.
not a historian, but I find that,
Yeah.
see, when we speak to you, or when people speak to you, there's so much that you're telling us that we haven't heard from others. So I'm not, sort of praising you, but what I'm saying is, we want to hear from you. You know,
Right.
as to a lot of things that you've said is that how the world is divided. If you could start from there and then talk about.
Meenaji, our scriptures, they are very clear about the entire geography of the planet. In fact, not just a planet, our scriptures give details about the universe, entire universe. There are different lokas, there's different, there are 14 primary lokas that have been described. And,
Yeah.
Earth is bang in the middle of it,
Yeah.
which is the Bhumandal. And
Yes.
we have
Yes.
6 lokas above and 7 below. And
Yes.
there are different planetary systems, different the cosmology is very grand. It is very unlike something you would expect from a religious book or a religious scripture. There are so many scientific concepts that you can find. And interestingly, in our scriptures, the earth has been called as bhugol.
Yeah.
So they always recognized that it was a sphere. It was not
Yeah.
the flat earth theory which existed in Europe for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And even after that, there was a theory called the geocentric theory. The
Yeah.
European scientists used to believe that the entire universe revolved around the earth. We are at the center of the creation, and even the sun revolved around earth. It was way later, I think it was Copernicus who actually said that no, he propounded the heliocentric theory.
Yes.
But we have always had these things written in the scriptures. Of course, not in a scientific way. They have been told to us through the means of stories, so
Yeah.
that people remember them.
Yeah.
And always, you would always find that these intellectual concepts are always shown in the form of stories, so that the memory, it stays in collective
Remains.
memory.
Yes.
There are different people who approach subjects in different ways, and you have the scientists, you have the PhDs, the doctorates, who would always get into the technical details.
Yeah.
But if you want to put something out there in the collective consciousness of an entire civilization, you
Yeah.
need to use stories.
Yeah.
And that's what our ancient sages did. They put it down in the form of Puranas and itihasas, and a lot of this stuff has been passed down to us. Unfortunately, because of this discontinuity, because of the civilizational battle that happened between the I would say relatively new modern religions compared to the ancient religions, and this happened all across the globe. The
Yeah.
pagan religions were all wiped out. Across the globe, even in
Yeah.
Europe, this happened. So the Native American religions were wiped off. The African religions were wiped off. So there was this entire phase where a lot of such stories, legends, scriptures were lost.
Yeah.
And that is why, there's a lot of disconnect even in our country between what our ancients used to know
Yeah.
and what we know today.
Yeah.
In fact,
Because a lot of
it's
the
sad.
libraries also got burnt, I think.
Yes, yes. A lot of libraries were burned. A lot of universities were ransacked. It's in, and it's in public domain. All this knowledge is historical records. These
Yeah.
are available. For
Yes.
who burnt what, who destroyed what. It's all available. If somebody wants to contest it, that's, I would say, it's more of a political stance that that person is
Yeah.
taking. But if you are a true, if you are really about regard talking about the truth, these things did happen, and we have to acknowledge these things and move on.
Yeah.
There's nobody's asking for vengeance for all those activities, but
Yeah.
these have to be recognized, I feel.
Yes.
And
Yes.
our historians unfortunately haven't done that, as you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So besides that, I think there is a lot more which the scriptures have to teach us. Our
Mm.
scriptures, in fact, the Purans, give the genealogies of the kings right from
Yeah.
Kali Yuga up to the modern times. And the timelines that come from those genealogies take us way back into the past,
Yes.
compared to what the historians tell us today.
Yeah.
So there has to be some amount of faith
Mm.
and some amount of they have to have an open mind. I think the people who are probing our history, the
Yeah.
archaeologists
Yeah.
and the
Should be broad-minded. Yes.
historians, I think they have to be a little more open minded, which
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately they haven't been,
Yes.
for all these years. And it's not, I would like to highlight that it's not about saffronization. It is not
Yeah.
about nationalism
A
or
certain,
hyper
yeah,
nationalism.
a certain
It is
religion.
about finding your true history.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
If you have evidences available, like the chariots you talked about, there have been
Yeah.
in Senoli in UP, there have been excavations very recently. There have been excavations before lockdown,
Yeah.
and we have had chariots. We've had burial mounds. You've had burial mounds of men as well as women who were
Yes.
buried with their weapons.
Yeah.
So it shows that it was a military society, where women soldiers also existed,
Mm.
and there were chariots, and there were swords, long swords, which were discovered.
Yeah.
So
Even doctor, even the stones used in Ram Setu, they were also found out that they actually float. So there's so much
Right,
of proof.
right. So actually, that's what I think. It's very difficult to comment on some things unless we explore them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whether you want to disprove a theory or whether you want to prove
Yeah.
it, for both you need to investigate,
Yeah.
which is unfortunately a spirit which is missing today. I think a lot of people go into the extremes. Either
Yes.
this or that,
Yeah.
and either it is history, everything is
Or
history, or
dismiss it.
everything is
Yeah.
mythology.
Yeah.
So, but I always say, in such discussions, that we need to have a middle ground. We
Yes.
have to have an open mind,
Yeah.
because, again, I would like to highlight that history is not sacrosanct.
Yeah.
Whatever is written in history books is also not
Yeah.
100%, the truth,
Yeah.
because it is somebody's version of history.
Yes.
So I think we have to find a common ground between the two and explore our culture, because it is not just about us. It is not just about a religion.
From
It is
where
not
we
just
came.
about
Yeah.
a country. This is the history of the world.
Yeah.
If the oldest civilizations started in the Indian subcontinent,
Mm.
it is the history of the world. It changes the history of the world, not just
Yes.
India.
Yes. Yeah. So you were very interestingly, you were talking about the whole universe divided into different lokas. I found that very interesting. Could you explain that to our viewers?
Right. So our scriptures actually talk about 14 lokas. Out of these, Earth is bang in the middle,
Yeah.
and above us are the higher lokas, six higher lokas,
Yeah.
which are the where the divine beings live. The
Yes. Yes.
devas and
Devaloka. Yeah.
other divine beings, the rishis, the saptarishis, etc. All the exalted personalities, they live in the higher lokas, and the topmost loka is of Brahma, which is the Brahmalok, Satyalok. So there's Satyalok, Tapalok, Janlok, Maharlok, Swarglok, and then we come to Bhulok, which is Earth.
Yeah.
And below us are seven planetary systems, which are the lower planets,
Yeah.
and these are called the hellish planets, but they're not
Yeah.
hell in
Yeah.
the Western concept of hell.
Yeah.
These are planets which are inhabited by beings who were not very friendly towards humans,
Yeah.
or in fact even towards devas. So
Yeah.
these are the planets where the asuras and the demonic beings live. And below these seven planets are the hells.
Yes.
These are the which is the narak. There's 26 different types of hells which exist below that. So now this is a very simplified model that is given in the Purans, because you cannot explain scientific concepts in a story format, right? It's more of a general map. Okay, so this is how it exists spatially.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about the universe, we know our universe is sort of the shape of the universe that we always see is it's sort of an oval,
Yes.
right? And our scriptures talk about the universe being called a Brahmand, and
Yes.
an egg is all we know the shape of an egg.
Yeah.
So the lokas are spatially arranged in a
Yes.
higher to lower level,
Yes.
but it is just it doesn't mean that the higher planets are more advanced and the
Yes.
lower planets are less advanced. It's just a geographical description.
Yeah.
And the interesting fact is that our scriptures talk about the denizens of these different lokas. What is the kind of lifestyle they have, what is the kind of lifespans they have. And you have very interesting concepts of time dilation,
Yeah.
which is a very scientific concept. If anybody has seen Interstellar,
Yeah.
you would remember that there was this they go to a planet, they go to explore a planet, three people,
Yeah.
and one of them stays back in the spaceship, and two actually go down to the planet. They
Yeah.
land in the ocean. And it's just been about 40-45 minutes that they have been on the planet, but when they come back to the spaceship, their colleague has already aged so much,
Yeah.
so years have passed for him.
Yeah.
And that is the concept of Einstein's theory of relativity and time
Yeah.
dilation, which you find in scriptures, which you
Yes.
find in Indian scriptures. I think
Yes.
it's mind-boggling, the
Mm.
kind of information that we have, and rubbishing it as stories of flights of fancy, I think is doing ourselves a disservice. Because
Absolutely.
if we have that, why? And that is the scientific temperament. You have to
Yeah.
explore, and
Yeah.
if you find that something is not fitting your theory, then you can reject it. But I
Yeah.
find a lot of people, so-called modern educated people, they just
Mm.
tend to rubbish things without even exploring.
Yes.
They don't want, they have never picked up any scripture in their life, they've never read anything, but they
Yeah.
already have opinions about
Yes.
how it is all flights of fancy.
Yeah.
So I think that is something which I would really uh, urge people to change. Read,
Yeah.
explore. Everything is available
Yeah.
today, online in different languages.
Yeah.
And it would be really good to find out the truth for yourself instead of
Yeah.
reading someone else's opinions in an article.
Yeah. So a lot of things, what you say, Dr. Vineet, is so true because see, we see a lot of drawings which are taken from the sky. It's as if a drone has taken these drawings or sketches, made those sketches. And if you think of Ravana's palace, how did he land there? He had to land on a flying object. So that would be the Pushpak Viman. And perhaps people think that, see, as others say, that you need fossil fuel for this. No, but there are other ways of flying as well. So could you just explain that a bit?
Right. So the Vimans, as mentioned in our scriptures, in fact, Pushpak was supposed to move according to the mind of the rider, of the pilot.
Oh, oh,
So it could sense you. So
yeah,
that's so sci-fi.
yeah,
That's like Star Trek. Where you
yes, yes,
connect with the computer
yeah,
on the spaceship, and the
yeah,
computer can
yeah,
read your mind, and you just
yeah.
put your palm on the panel, and it can automatically decipher
Go
what
where
you
you
want.
want. Yeah,
So all these things are mentioned in our scriptures, and in fact, these Vimanas, they actually they're mentioned to have run on, not on fossil fuels, of course, but
yeah,
on mercury.
yeah,
So that's a very interesting thing, because mercury, we nobody has been able to explore mercury or
yeah,
utilize mercury as a fuel.
yeah,
And so, but there's a concept of a mercury vortex,
yes,
which kind of it's a theoretical concept. Nobody has been able to actually put it into use, into practical use. But the scriptures mention that the vimanas ran on mercury vortex.
Yeah.
So this is technology which has been lost.
Mm.
And in fact there are a lot of conspiracy theories in which they say that Hitler also wanted to learn about these technologies, and he had sent some people to India during the World War to decipher the Sanskrit scriptures and figure out if he could create something, because
Yeah.
the World War, a lot of discoveries happened. So I think it needs a sustained and not sporadic
Yeah.
study. It
Mm.
needs diligence. It needs a lot of the desire to find out the truth or decode or decipher these texts. I
Yeah.
think that is what is important, and that is what has been unfortunately missing in our Western educated setup, where we tend
Yeah.
to scoff at everything and
Yeah.
we don't really even want to entertain the possibility that this could have happened.
Yeah. But ironically, Doctor, see, if you look at all these latest movies coming, on the OTP platform or other, Hollywood movies, you'll see that, see, they use most of our technology. For example, the kind of spells that they have in Harry Potter's movies or in other movies like Wheel of Fortune or Wheel of Time or the other, such series. But these are things that they've been doing already. As you said, mantras have very much power. It's because of the syllables, that are uttered. It has its effect, and miracles happen. So, could you tell us about that? How they use our, whatever we sort of our rishis invented, and then they use it, in their, and they call it their patented stuff. That sort of thing.
So I think I wouldn't really blame all of them for stealing stuff. I think it's all this stuff has been existing in the Indo-European for lack of a better term, mythologies.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
these are very common beliefs. Some of them have been very very predominant in the Indo-European societies across the world. And so the Western industry, rather, I would say the Hollywood and other film and TV series, they take a lot of inspiration from Greek and European myths, Greek and Roman
Yes.
myths. So Greeks and Romans were very closely connected to the Indians and the Iranians. And I'm
Yes.
not talking about the race here. I'm talking about the civilization that
Yes.
existed.
Yes.
And in fact, there is just so much of congruence between the beliefs that we had and even the gods. A lot of people don't know that the Greeks worshipped a god called Mithras. The cult of Mithras was very very prominent in ancient Greece and Rome. And
Okay.
Mithra is actually a derivative of Mitra,
Mm.
and who
Okay.
is a solar deity, who's one of the Adityas in Vedic pantheon.
Yeah.
And the concept of 33 gods that we have, out of those there are 12 Adityas, 12 solar gods, one of which is Mitra.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's the Ashwini Kumars that you may have heard of, who are the sons of Surya,
Yeah.
and Nasatya and Dasra, their names, and they were also revered. Nasatya was revered in the Middle East, and in fact, Sumeria, Mesopotamia, we had so many similar gods. So the beliefs, a lot of beliefs were very common, and the inspiration could have been taken from anywhere. But
Yeah.
yes, there is all the stuff that we see,
Yeah.
which the youngsters today find very exciting. It all is available in our scriptures already.
Yeah.
So somebody maybe has taken inspiration, or somebody has thought of it themselves. But the point is that all that exciting stuff is already there in our scriptures that we don't pay
Yeah.
attention to.
Yeah.
We are ready to watch we're ready to pay a good amount of money to go to a 3D theater and watch a Avengers Endgame movie.
Hollywood
But
movie. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
we don't want to put any effort in finding out these stories in our own scriptures.
Yeah. And a very interesting thing that you also said was that, see, none of us, most of us don't know what is actually a linga. You've explained it so well that it's a wall of fire from where Lord Shiva emerged. If you could explain that concept to us.
So, a lingam actually refers to the pillar that it was a pillar of fire. So, according to the Shiv Puran, there was a pillar of fire that existed at the beginning of time, and there were only two gods at that time. There was Brahma and there was Vishnu. And so they were startled to see a pillar of fire emerge in the universe.
Yeah.
And they decided to find out its origins. So both decided to dive in the opposite end and try to find the origins. But they were unable to do that. And finally, it was Shiva who emerges from the pillar, and he says that I'm this cosmos. I'm the one who's created everything. I'm the one who's created you. So, that's when they realize that he is the supreme god. That's according to Shiv Puran. Other Purans have different versions, but the origin of the lingam is there. And actually, the lingam is also mentioned as the skambh in the Vedas. And so there's this concept. So again, a lot of Puranic stories, they are explanations of verses that you find in the Vedas.
Yeah.
So Vedas have very cryptic references. They are very small
So are they
couplets.
very highly specialized?
Yes, and they don't detail the
Mm.
stories.
Yes.
They
Yes.
mention something in passing, and they assume that the person who's reading the Vedas would know the
Knows the
story.
background. Yeah.
But unfortunately, we don't anymore. So Ved Vyas, in his, he was very kind that he decided to decipher these stories, and he created the Purans for people who are in Kali Yuga, who would not have the intellect or the even the interest to decode the Vedas, to know these stories or understand these stories. So, these stories emerge from the same Vedic corpus. And so the lingam actually refers to that pillar of fire. Of course, there is also the tantric mode of worship where a lingam and yoni actually refer to what we think of them as. But
Yes.
in the right hand or Dakshin Marg of prayers, a lingam actually refers to the pillar of fire. And that is why you always put cooling substances on the lingam.
Yeah.
You always put
Actually,
water,
yeah.
curd, milk, and you provide bale patra and all those
Yeah.
things which are supposed to have a cooling effect.
Yeah. So could you tell us a little bit more about the three gods? The three important powers.
Right. So, the gods, as I said, there are various versions, and in various Purans, the gods emerge from each other.
Yeah.
And that is just to show that, the Trinity is the sacrosanct, the highest of the gods, the highest of the hierarchy. And they emerge from each other in different kalpas. So that is why you have different stories in the different Purans. In different days of Brahma, creation starts in a different way. So sometimes Vishnu ji emerges later, sometimes Brahma emerges later, sometimes Shiva emerges later.
Yeah.
So the three gods, they are they have very specified functions. So Brahma is supposed to be the creator,
Yeah.
and he does this process of creation for his entire life, which is 100 years of Brahma, which is actually close to about 311 trillion human years. So when you do the time calculation conversion, so Brahma is supposed to live for 311 trillion human years or solar years.
Yeah.
And every day of Brahma, every morning he starts the creation, and every night it gets dissolved again. So Brahma is continuously experimenting. He's trying to make things better,
Yeah.
and that's his work. So once Brahma is created in the morning, he's created everything, and for the smooth functioning of everything right up to the night of Brahma, there is Vishnu, who's the preserver, who's the manager of the universe.
Yeah.
So he makes sure that everything is running smoothly, and he maintains the balance of good and evil.
Yeah.
So that is why you always find that it's Vishnu who always comes down as avatars,
Yes.
as incarnations to bring that balance back into the equilibrium. And then Shiva is responsible for destroying whatever is old
Yeah.
and which needs to be removed. So a
Yeah.
lot of people have this very, very negative view about Shiva being called a destroyer. So it's not a negative term unless you have uh, destruction of what is old and what is degenerating. You cannot have something new coming out of it.
Yeah.
So that's the cycle of life. The old needs to be replaced to bring the new to the surface,
Yeah.
and that is the very important job that Shiva does. So all three of them have very important roles to play, and between the three of them, they manage this entire universe. And of
Yeah.
course, they have the well, I would say not really lesser deities, but comparatively minor deities, who help them with specific functions like Indra or Agni or Varun, and
Yeah,
they are in charges of certain domains. So yeah,
yeah, like a ministry.
yes, but the supervisors are the Trinity.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. See, doctor, see, it's very ironic that most of us, I mean, who have been traveling here and there, most of us have studied in either a missionary school or a convent school, which according to our parents at that time, was the best form of education, and we were taught to read hymns. We didn't even learn Sanskrit. Okay, we were learning the Bibles, the Psalms. We were singing. We were doing everything that Jesus wanted us to do. Then half our lifetime, we are now undoing what we learned, because we are coming back to our roots. And this is happening to all of us, most Indians. Now we're becoming very, very spiritually, more aware, and it's all at different levels. Yours would be higher, ours would be in somewhere different levels. So what happens is it's so difficult for us, because see, if this had been taught to us earlier, as in a gurukul, where you're already learning Sanskrit, it's a language that is scientific, and there are so many qualities. You can chant mantras better, because mantras have to be read very specifically. There is a tune to it. So
Yeah.
half our life we've forgotten all that, and then we're coming back to our roots. And it's so difficult, because see, for example, now only about say about 5 or 6 years back, I started believing in Lord Shiva, and I found a guru, Swami Nityananda, and then I started feeling some powers, and like levitation and all. So what happened was, if we had experienced this as children, it would have been so beneficial for us, because there are children in Gurukul who are doing their PhD at the age of 12 and 13, because their brains have become so evolved, and we are here sitting and looking at some silly stuff on Netflix and things like that. Talk about that, doctor.
Well, yes, it is unfortunate. And I think, I was recently reading somewhere that there was a proposal to have Sanskrit as a national language at the time of independence. But unfortunately, that didn't
Never
come
happened.
through.
Yeah,
Yeah, it never happened. But
yeah,
had that happened, all of us would have been connected with our roots.
yeah,
I think it's as simple as that. Knowing a language makes a lot of difference.
yes,
But be that as it may, today we can't do anything about it. We
yeah,
can start learning Sanskrit, of course, but there's also a lot of translations that are available.
yes,
And these translations, although not doing complete justice to the original, are still a source of some information
yes,
for us. So I feel, we have to make the best of whatever is available, and we have to start reading and start exploring in whichever language it is available, or in whichever language we're comfortable. And
yeah,
most Indians know at least two languages, right? One is
yes,
English and one is the mother tongue. So
yes,
I always suggest, you should start reading in both the languages. If you pick up a
yeah,
scripture, start reading
yeah,
in both the languages, so that you get a sense of what is the real truth,
yeah,
which emerges from the two translations in different languages. But again, I think it's never too late to start. So
yeah,
it doesn't matter if you're starting when you're 50 or when you're 60 or 70, or whether you're starting at 20. So in fact, just this afternoon, I had a very interesting conversation with a 21-year-old.
yeah,
And it is so heartening to see that people the youngsters, 17, 18 year olds writing to me, wanting to explore their scriptures and wanting to read more, and get to know the sources from where they can find out. I think
yeah,
that's a sign of revival. So it's not just the older generations, it's also the
no,
younger lot who are
yes,
coming back to their roots. And I think it's a very healthy sign. It's
yeah,
not about being religious.
yeah,
And I always say that Hinduism is one religion which is the least religious. It has always been more scientific. So
yeah.
it is a way to figure out your own history. It is a way to figure out the beliefs of your ancestors. And
It's
whatever
also
religion you
it's also
may
a
have.
lifestyle. It's also a lifestyle. You're learning
Yes.
so much through medicine and everything. Ayurveda.
Definitely, definitely. And Indians, the ancient Indians, they had explored all facets of life,
Yeah,
all sorts of scientific streams they had explored, and they had found out so many things which can be useful to us even today. Even
yes,
our cooking today, when we're talking about corona and immunity boosters and all that, we realize that a lot of these ingredients which are very helpful are already there in our
yeah,
day-to-day
enough.
lives. So there is so much information, there's so much knowledge which is available, and I think it's never too late to start. Whatever you are trying to explore, do it with a little amount of persistence, because
Yeah,
it is easy to get discouraged because some of the concepts may be a little technical or a little heavy to understand right in the beginning.
yeah,
But I always advise people to start slow,
yeah,
start with something light, and then move on to a bigger scripture or a more in-depth reading of the scriptures, which is the way it should be approached,
yeah,
and it will definitely add a lot of value to your life in various ways.
yeah.
And
See
I'm
what I
not just talking
yeah,
about the your professional life or personal life, your spiritual life, your emotional life. Everything gets to a different level
yeah.
when you read these the wisdom which has been shared by the ancients.
Yeah. And what I've also noticed is that, see, if on a daily basis you do some sort of meditation, even if it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes, there's so much of energy charged and there's so much of positivity that I mean, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but whenever I, meditate very deeply, I get some sort of good news or something positive comes at the end, after my meditation. So there's something, see, like people say, when you're in Mount Kailasha, we were talking to Mayur Kalbat, the novelist, and he was saying that, see, there's so much of energy there, powerful energy there. So, whatever is happening in our, Sanatana Dharma, whether it is through our, scriptures or, whatever, the mantras and slokas and all, it's actually helping us become better human beings. Because, see, the moment you start doing meditation, you become very calm, you lose your temper, you
Yes.
start seeing things much more clearly. So there's so
Yes.
much, everything that the Western world is leading you to, which is alcoholism, drug abuse and all that. It's exactly the opposite. Meditation has a cooling effect on you, and it makes you understand that, see, you belong to a certain, a certain these are your roots. So
Right.
there's so much that you can learn. And I suppose, just as you say, a lot of youngsters are coming back to this fold, to understand everything better. And when people like you also speak, it's very important because many people get educated, in the process. So
Right. So
even the
and
role of
as I said,
yeah,
I'm not an expert, but
yeah,
the whole idea of learning something new is that you can apply it, right? And
yeah,
this is the information which I feel, personally, that there is so much to learn, and the more I talk about it, the more, even if the spark of curiosity is ignited in one person out of 100 who are listening right now,
yeah, yeah,
I think my job is done, because that one person would trend to explore it more, and he or she might, inspire someone else to do that as well.
absolutely, yeah,
So I think we need to have more conversations like this. We
yeah,
have to talk about it in our friend circles. Why
yes.
are we so hesitant in discussing these topics with our friends? And why don't we try
Here, Dr. Vineet, I think, see, it's because of the schools where, they, because of peer pressure, they make you feel ashamed,
yes,
of
and
all these
it's not
things. See,
cool to
wearing,
talk about
yeah, for
these things.
example, wearing a bindi, it's not good, or wearing a, rudraksha mala is not, it's not
Right,
fashionable. So,
right.
it's actually these schools that train you to look down upon your own roots. And then
I think
half your lifetime, you're coming back to that,
right. No, Meenaji, so that's why I feel, the families have a very important role to play in it, because our schools being, the way they are, and because we, being a secular country, we are not allowed to teach any religious scriptures in the schools and colleges, which is the way it should be in a secular country. But the point is
No,
that, this is
no.
where
But if you're looking at Christian schools, they force us to learn the Bible and the Psalms and all
yes,
that.
Yes, which actually, and ideally in a
Shouldn't
secular
happen.
country shouldn't
Shouldn't
happen.
happen.
But I would say, the only way to balance it out, or the fill the lack of information, is through the families,
Yeah.
and the parents have to take the responsibility to teach their children, and
Yeah.
for that the parents themselves have to learn. So it's a very small thing. What my dad used to do when I was a kid was that he used to get Amar Chitra Kathas for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
Every
important.
weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, so every weekend, myself and my sister, we would get two Amar Chitra Kathas each. And every weekend, we would learn a very interesting story from our scriptures or from
Yeah.
our history.
Mm.
And
Even
that is how you
Panchatantra.
start building the foundation.
Yeah. Even books like Panchatantra are so educative.
Exactly, exactly. The Jatak stories.
Mm.
And today it's all the only mythology related, again, I'm using the term mythology because of a lack of a better word, but the only mythology related, Indian mythology related show that we have today for children is Chota Bheem.
Yeah.
That is it. There is so much more that you can do. There's so many concepts that can be
See,
explained.
Dr. Vineet, see, we've been on our part bringing out classical operas, which are based on stories like Ramayana and Mahabharata, different aspects.
Oh,
And what we've
yes.
done is to bring back Sanskrit. We've composed the songs in Sanskrit, you know, in
Right,
a sort of classical plus Western way. You see, so it
right,
woos the youngster, you know.
right.
And what happened is when we had these shows in Chaudhaya in Bangalore, the halls were full, and people really enjoyed it. So we were trying to sort
Yes.
of modernize it without losing the essence,
Yes,
yeah,
yes. And
without going away from it.
that's what we need to do, Meenaji. So, and that's what I said in another interview as well, that, the stories that have been told in the scriptures, they need to be retold in a way
Yes,
in which the modern audiences can understand them
yes,
and connect with them. So that's what I've been trying to do through my books, building, bringing out the stories of people most people don't know about,
yeah, yeah,
and in a way that, people who are reading those stories can actually understand, oh yes, this could have happened.
yeah,
So there's a need to also reinvent our heritage. So a lot of people are doing it, and a lot of people are working on it. I know because I get mails and messages from so many people who are working on stories,
yeah,
and I kind of try and help them in their
yeah,
endeavors. But there is a lot of work that can still happen.
yeah,
Why don't we have a big budget movie on
yeah.
something similar?
See, I'll tell
Like an
you,
action.
Dr. Vineet, see, we sort of, I sort of rewrote Lord, it was called Lord of Lanka, or based on Ravana's story. Okay,
Uh,
now see what you'll notice is that all the plays or any dramas that came would always portray Ravana as a very cruel person. Okay, here what we
right,
did was we showed him as a Shiva Bhakt who was born in India, in Noida. Okay, and how he became a Shiva Bhakt and the kind of powers that he had. He was fluent in so many subjects, astrophysics, everything, astrology, everything. And then what we did was, after the whole thing, we explained the whole story. And at the end, when Rama kills him, Lakshmana is very happy and he says, Lord Rama, you've killed, see, we have to rejoice. So he says, no. See, he did that in order to get moksha. Okay. He was one of the greatest kings, who ruled Lanka. He was so good at administration. This is something that you should learn from him. See, this is the
right,
kind of lessons that we need to learn. I mean, who is Lord Rama? And
right.
was Lord Rama Ravana had no other choice but to die in his hands to get moksha.
Right. But I feel also, sometimes people tend to forget the balance while doing
Yeah,
this, because
yes,
I see a lot of books and features coming out in the market where the villains are completely turned into heroes, and the
yeah,
heroes are shown as people with a negative shade, or as cowards, or as
yeah, yeah,
people that it was a necessity for them to do something. They were
yeah,
not really believe in doing something, I think, which is very unfortunate, that
yeah,
when you are bringing out stuff for the uninitiated, who do
yes,
not know the
yes,
basic story,
yeah, yeah,
and they tend to believe this version of the story.
yeah,
So this is, and that's something that I'm very, very conscious about, because a lot of
yeah,
people are very naive to the literature,
yes, yes.
and when you
Because
do not have
all they know is that during they have to burn Ravana. I mean, he's just bad. You have to burn him.
Right, right. So
Yeah,
you build up that curiosity, and you give a balanced view. I think
yeah,
that's better. Instead
yeah,
of and our scriptures have always shown the different characters in shades of gray. It's
yes,
it's never been a complete black or white. So Ravan had his plus points, but unfortunately the negative points overpowered. So
yes, absolutely. Yeah,
that's why he's known as a villain, because
yeah,
you may be the most learned person on the planet. You may
yeah,
be the son. He was the great grandson of Brahma.
yes,
But if you read the Valmiki Ramayana, he had all these personal achievements. But he was a serial rapist. He was a womanizer, and he was a tyrant. He
yeah.
was a
We've
very good
explained that,
administrator.
Dr. Vineet. We've explained all that so that you see
Right,
both sides. Yeah, both sides
right,
of story.
exactly.
No,
That's
it's
what I'm
very
saying.
true. What you said is so true. Yes.
Yes, yes. So there has to be a balance, and I feel in that urge to modernize, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of books like that in the market. A lot of people tend to just gloss over the
Yeah,
negatives and portray the villains as heroes, which is again a very bad thing to do.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
as an author, I feel offended because it's a disservice to the original
yeah,
author
absolutely. Yeah.
who's written the book.
Also,
So,
one very important thing that you had conveyed in your talk was that, see, the importance of rishis or gurus, you know, to learn. Because, see, the uninitiated, as you say, we need to learn more from our gurus. And if they're not there, see, what's happening in India presently is that, see, because of these missionaries, they're trying their best to get rid of these our gurus, our sages. So they'll just plant some sort of sex scandal or a rape scandal or something when there's no victim, there at all. So what happens is our people are being, sort of becoming fatherless or motherless because these gurus were actually, people who they could go to. An ashram is a place where you could go and learn things. So this is another very big disadvantage Indians are facing now.
right. So I think that's more of a political thing. So, but
Yes.
I feel unfortunately we've also lost that connect. There
Yeah.
you temples in our villages are still the centers of cultural activities.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
As we have moved from a rural to an urban civilization,
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
lost connect with the roots even without anyone else plotting against us.
Yeah.
We how many times do we go to the temple, or how
Yeah.
many festivals do we observe at our home?
Yeah.
And people don't like to play holy because it's wastage of water. They don't like to
Yeah.
burst crackers because there's pollution. But these things happen in festivals all across the globe. There are firecrackers that are burned across the globe on New Year's. There's
Or
4th of
weddings.
July celebrations in America. There's water
Yeah.
festival in Thailand.
Or at
uh,
weddings.
yeah, and people visit Thailand. I've been to Thailand during that
Yeah.
Songkran festival, which is a
Yeah.
new year, which
Yeah.
happens in April.
Yeah.
And there's a water festival going on, and everybody's playing Holi there with
Yeah.
water. Nobody talks about wastage of
Yeah.
water there.
It's
So I
only the
think
seculars in India
so
who have a
I think
problem.
somehow, and I think it again comes from a lack of pride in your culture.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
always feel we are more modern or more
Yeah.
sophisticated if we
Yeah.
criticize the culture. And instead of realizing that, all these activities, all these festivals were a means to bring people together, they
Exactly.
were just a
Exactly.
means of
And also
celebrating
tourists. Yeah.
your culture
And
and
also
heritage.
tourists. See, for
Right,
example, yeah, if you have Diwali in Indonesia, you find all the roads decorated so beautifully. Why can't our
yes,
country do it? But we are so
exactly.
scared of what the others will say.
Right, right. So I think again we need to build that pride again in our heritage, and that can happen. That can at least start with an
Yeah.
exploration of the cultures,
Yeah.
our own
Yeah.
culture and our scriptures.
Yeah. So, what is your advice to youngsters? For example, they say that where do we begin? Where do we get back? What? How do we start?
So, I personally I've tried all sorts of different philosophies in life, and I've read a lot, and I've come across some very small and simple books with that have been brought out by the ISKCON Hare Krishna guys. They're very small, simple books like Life Comes from Life, Beyond Life and Death. I think they're very good introductions because they're very short and sweet.
Yeah.
So Ishopanishad, these are very short books, very tiny, small books, and they, I think, kind of sort of give you an introduction. And once you have that sort of a base, you move on to something actually which is more in depth, like the Bhagavad Gita. Or
Yeah,
if you want to know the philosophical aspects of
yeah,
the teachings, you move to a Bhagavad Gita, because there are multiple Upanishads available.
yeah,
But Bhagavad Gita is said to be the summary of all the Upanishads. So
yeah,
it's best to read the summary, when you are pressed for time.
yeah,
And again, for knowing your history and the legends, I always advise, read the Valmiki Ramayana. You will
yeah,
know what was the character of Ram, what was the character of Ravan, what was the circumstances that led to the events that happened with Sita, etc. A lot of people have a lot of doubts about why she was treated like this, etc., etc. Unless you read the original, you will not understand.
yeah,
And there's so many other characters, like Vishwamitra, whom I wrote
yeah,
about, that we don't know about, and
yeah,
his story is so inspiring.
yeah,
The kind of work that Parshuram,
yeah,
who did, in cleaning up the a corrupt entire governing ruling class, to
yeah,
bring relief to the citizens of the world. I think
yeah,
that is so inspirational.
yeah.
So I
Also,
feel,
I think here you can also mention that they've also, saved each one's back history, the past, the present, and the future in leaves. These palm leaves. This is there in the
right.
south.
So
And it's
yes, so
written in that language, whether it's
yes, yes. So
Tamil. Yeah,
yeah, there's a concept of the so in the north, we call it the Lal Kitab, which
yeah, yeah,
apparently it's supposed to have the past and the future and your present lives all detailed, but it doesn't have it apparently for everyone.
yeah.
So I'm not really into. I haven't
What they
explored
say,
astrology.
yeah, what they say is that the people who don't have it, those are people who are aimless, so they don't have some sort of a mission in life, and they lead lives like nomads. So for them, there are no leaves, you see. So why I'm telling you is that I'm quite skeptical, but when I went there, they did take out leaves for us, and you'll be surprised. I mean, the kind of, when I was in Dubai at that time, and years from then, everything that they said in that leaf came true, you see. So it was amazing. And not only me, for many others.
Definitely. No, I think, the ancients had it right. I wouldn't believe a modern astrologer as much as I would believe somebody, who had written down maybe hundreds of
Yeah.
years ago. So, so
Yeah.
I,
It's
I think
called,
I'm more
as Karthik says, Nadi Jyotisha.
right, right. So I think I have more faith in the teachings and the writings of the people who existed hundreds of years ago, because they knew their
Absolutely.
stuff, and they were experts. They were actual experts in it.
Yeah.
So, but again, I think all is not lost. We can still revive these ancient sciences, and the knowledge can be revived. We only need a little push,
Yeah.
from and like, I've heard recently that the BHU has started a 2-year course on Hinduism.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure what the syllabus is, but we need more such courses in the universities. They have
In
to
fact,
be.
uh, in fact, Dr. Vineet, I think Sanskrit should be a compulsory subject, from childhood, because it's so important. You find it in every other university in Germany and all. In our country, we don't have it. It's really
Yes.
absolutely sad.
Yes, I think that should happen. But also, we need more courses on Indian philosophy,
Yes,
Indian
yes,
theology, Indian belief systems in the universities, so that, and why I'm saying is that, so that, a person can actually do a doctorate and become
yeah,
an expert in that subject, which is lacking right now. So I think there is a movement towards that, in certain institutes at least. But as individuals also, and as families, as people who want to revive their culture, I think each of us has that responsibility to do that. It is
yeah,
not enough to just think about it anymore. We
yeah,
need to talk about it. We need
yeah,
to enlighten others, and we need
yeah,
to share with others whatever we know. And I
yes,
think that is like, and probably the last comment I would make to wrap up the session.
yeah. I'll just read the sentence from Karthik. Karthik says Rishi Brigu collated, it's how much, 200,000 horoscopes, and wrote the Samhita. And it is said that the horoscope of the entire humanity in just 200,000 horoscopes. So that's
Right.
interesting, Karthik. Yeah. So here, just before we leave, Doctor, could you just tell us where your books are available? So in case they would, viewers would like to acquire it, because we've heard very good
Right. So
reviews of it.
I think they're available everywhere. I mean,
Amazon?
online.
Yeah.
They're available on Amazon and Flipkart as paperback and as ebooks.
Yes.
If you're living somewhere outside India, they would be available on the Amazon still as
Mhm.
ebooks, not the physical copies.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's also the blog that I was
Yeah.
running almost. I started researching about 10 years ago, and that's when I started running the blog, which I wrapped up in 2017. But there is a lot of information, a lot of scientific information, which is available there on deciphering the so-called myths. And
Okay.
the blog is called Decode Hindu Mythology.
Yeah.
And I mean, people are free to check it out and
Yeah.
share
Absolutely.
comments
Yeah.
and opinions. I'm very
Yeah.
active on social media, on Insta, Twitter, so you can write to me if you have any questions. And I think, I would just urge everyone to read, explore, watch, listen, and share the information with as many people as you can, so
Absolutely.
that we can spread the word, we can revive the lost culture and heritage once
Yeah.
again.
Absolutely. And this is just one of the first of our interactions, Dr. Vineet. We'll call you more often, so please do bear with us and do give us some free time.
It would be my pleasure. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for inviting me, Meena ji. And a big thank you to all the audience who has been listening very patiently.
Yeah.
And I hope it was useful for at
Very
least a
much.
few.
Yes, very much. From the comments that are coming in, definitely it is. And what happens is it grows over the week. People see it because sometimes, like it's a weekend, so they may be busy. So after that, they start reading it in their free time and seeing it in their free time. So it'll be
Right.
very interesting. Thank you so much, Dr. Vineet, and
My
good night.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good
Thank
night.
you for hosting me. Thank
Yeah,
you.
good night.